Hello everyone, I'm JG, welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm reviewing the new Logic album, Everybody. Now Logic is a rapper that I got into a little bit over a year ago, honestly. I heard good things about him when he released his album, The Incredible True Story, his last full-length album. However, I didn't get around to actually checking him out until a few months later. And when I did, I liked the stuff I heard. I liked his last album. I went back and listened to his other stuff that I enjoyed. And then he released that mixtape last year, which I don't remember the name of. I'll put it up on screen. And I wasn't too big a fan of that. I wasn't a fan of the trap style of it, but he said that was kind of like a one-time thing for the fans. So I wasn't really too bothered by the fact that I didn't really enjoy it all that much. Going into this project, I had high hopes pretty much coming off of his last album that I really enjoyed. Now this album, Everybody here, has a very, interesting concept or concepts going on with it. The first of which has to do with race, politics, and, all that kind of jazz here, which, the interesting thing about it is that Logic, he's a biracial person, rapper, and I know he's not the only one out there that is, but he's one of the few that really talk about it a lot. At least here on this project, he talks about it a lot, that is. Not so much on his other works, his older works, but here, he brings it up a good amount, as has kind of become a meme on the internet over the past week or so. I really don't see this as really a bad thing. In fact, I was really interested to hear Logic's perspective concerning race issues in the United States right now, given the fact that he's biracial. And the lead single, Everybody, from this project that I already reviewed here on the channel and I enjoyed, he kind of gave us a taste of that, and I thought, well, this could be interesting having to hear what he has to say. However, the thing is, he brings it up so often here on this project, and not in a very different way each time. It's kind of the same few points he brings up over and over again, and it kind of feels like he's hammering the same points over and over again, and it kind of becomes old. Hence why I think a lot of people have kind of resorted to memeing it. Not really because it's here all that much. It's not like every track he's talking about it, but when he does talk about it, it's kind of in the same way every time, so it starts to feel redundant. Moving on to the next kind of concept here is the actual story of the album, which happens to be between a man named Adam, who dies on the first track, and the skit in the first track, and he meets God then in this white boy, who's voiced by Neil deGrasse Tyson, because of course, and then they kind of have this conversation that goes throughout the album, and it's kind of revealed that everyone in the universe is Adam. Throughout his lives, I guess you would say, he's reincarnated over and over again after each death to be everyone in the universe until he runs out of people, and then he kind of, I don't know what happens really, he kind of becomes a god, I guess, that's kind of implied. It's not really that important. Pretty much the whole concept is that when you treat people badly, you're treating yourself badly. When you treat people nicely, you're treating yourself nicely. And that kind of connects back to Logic's message that you should treat everyone nicely. Everyone's important. Everyone should be treated fairly and equally. And I think this is actually an interesting concept. It's not an original concept completely because it's based on a story called The Egg, which I haven't actually read, but, so I really don't know how similar it is to its source material. But I think it's an interesting concept, and it's explained over the course of skits. As I mentioned before, the first one appears on the opening track, Hallelujah, towards the end. There's one in the middle of the album, or I guess you could say towards the middle of the album, on the track Waiting Room. Actually, that entire track is just kind of this skit that goes on for about 5 minutes. And then on the last track, Africarian, comes the last kind of skit. And the thing about it is, while I do find the story interesting, it's just with repeated listens, it kind of starts to wear on you because, of course, you're saying through these long segments of dialogue, especially Waiting Room, because that's, as I said before, about 5 minutes long. And, after you hear it the first time, the first time you hear it, it's definitely interesting, but after the first time, it just kind of, you kind of know what's happening already, and it's just kind of like, can we just get back to the music? There's also several inconsistencies and plot holes, things that I think need more explaining here on the album than they actually get. And, the story itself is interesting, and I just don't feel like it's executed all that well, and the album kind of suffers as a result. Another concept of the album is that every track is supposed to be told from the perspective of a different person in the 21st century. One of the different people that Adam is going to be reincarnated at one point in his existence. I don't even know what to call it anymore. It's not his life. It's something, though. But that's initially a very interesting concept, an interesting way to kind of connect it back to that concept of everybody. But here, the thing is, I don't really get that feeling when listening to it. The first time I listened to the album, I didn't even recognize that it was supposed to be told from different perspectives. And the big problem with this is the fact that Logic keeps bringing it back to himself. As I mentioned before, he talks about being biracial a lot. And the thing is, on some of these tracks, he brings that up a lot. So he's obviously talking about himself, yet, it's supposed to be told from the perspective of many different people. So I'm kind of confused. Which is it? Is it supposed to be from different people's perspectives? Or is he talking about himself? Despite my complaints I have with the story and narrative that is presented here, the music here on this project is actually pretty good. Now, the actual rapping from Logic is about, what you would expect. It's very good. He has that typical fast flow, and many people criticize Logic for sounding a lot like some of his other peers, like Kendrick and Drake and J. Cole. But here I feel like he's kind of starting to be a bit different from them, having his own sort of style. However, it's still apparent that he has flows similar to them, especially on tracks like Everybody, where he sounds a lot like Kendrick, as many people have pointed out. But I don't see it as all that big of a problem. And then going on to the instrumentals, the beats here, I think they're pretty good. They have kind of this grand feel to them, this kind of triumphant feel at times on tracks like Alleluia and, what was it, the track with Killer Mike, Confess, that one I really liked also. And then, of course, Black Spider-Man also kind of has the tracks in the similar vein to that. And then, there are some other beats that are quite different, like on America. I really like the beat there also. The bass I was, fairly enjoying. Definitely one of the highlights in terms of the beats on the album, in my opinion. And then, despite my complaints with some of the lyrics and the whole concept of the album, there's some moments where I think it manages to work, particularly two tracks, the 1-800, all those numbers, Suicide Hotline track, and the track Anxiety. And these two tracks deal more with mental health issues. Of course, the first one dealing with depression and suicide, and the latter of the two dealing with anxiety, as you could probably figure. The Suicide Hotline track is definitely an interesting one. Now, Logic himself has never actually dealt with suicide or depression and suicidal thoughts. I saw that in an interview. They said that he was just kind of inspired by fans of his, that he was these fans kind of told him that he saved that his work kind of saved their lives, and he was really kind of inspired by that, and he made an actual track kind of trying to help people that might be going through depression, because all those other tracks he made that helped people weren't intended really to do that. It just ended up, being that way. But this one was kind of intended to do that. And, his perspective on the track is he's rapping from the perspective of someone that is, depressive and wants to kill themselves. They're calling the Suicide Hotline number. And then Alicia Cara is on the other end. She's the guest feature here. And I really don't like her voice. I just never really have. I've heard other tracks by her, and I'm not a fan of her voice. But she does a fine enough job here. I guess I like the lyrics that she's presenting. And it works well with the whole concept of, the back and forth between Logic and her vocals. It's a sort of sad, it's a very sad track, but at the same time it has a sort of pop, radio-friendly appeal. It's not doesn't go super hard, I guess you could say. And then, of course, the track Anxiety, which was one that I really found myself connecting to because I actually deal with anxiety. So, hearing someone make a track about it is always something that I enjoy. And Logic, he talks about it in a lot more of an upfront sort of, on the nose kind of way, not really concealing it in lots of metaphors and things like that, like lots of artists I've heard talk about anxiety do. Here he's very honest about it, especially in the spoken word part at the end where he's recounting a story, a true story, the incredible true story, I guess you could say. He's kind of talking about how when he went to see Star Wars in 2015 with his wife, he suffered a panic attack, and in the hospital he heard it was from anxiety, and he just couldn't believe that, anxiety caused this. And, that's not honestly a thing that I myself felt when, dealing with anxiety. It's because in society you're kind of just told that, it's normal to be anxious and things like that, but actually having anxiety is a different thing, and it's something that can be problematic if you're not really, aware of it. So I found myself kind of connecting to that, and I found the track overall to be pretty good. These moments, I think, also connect a lot better to this whole album's concept of being told from different perspectives, because these two tracks I actually feel like could be told from different perspectives. Of course, the Suicide Hotline track was definitely from the perspective of someone that was going to commit suicide, and then of course the Anxiety track could be easily told from the perspective of someone that has anxiety. Those make sense in the context of that whole idea he had. They actually make sense here, which is good to have, especially that they're placed next to each other. I think it makes sense. And then this also kind of reveals one of the faults with the album, especially on the track Anxiety, where he's talking about, well, the whole just talking in general. At the end of the track, he has the spoken word part, as I mentioned before, which, while I enjoyed, the thing is, on this album, he does a lot of talking. The track Take It Back also has him doing this whole talking thing. The track starts with him rapping, and it's good and all, and then less than halfway through the track, he kind of goes off on this rambling about his upbringing and how that led him to where he is now and stuff. It's interesting to hear, because it's cool to hear his backstory and kind of what led him to where he is now, but the thing is, it's just a lot of talking. The same goes with Anxiety. And then on the track Confess, that features Killer Mike, one of my favorite rappers of all time. So excited to find out he was going to have a guest appearance on this album. But it's not like he's not rapping, he's just speaking. And I know Killer Mike, he's into politics and stuff. He obviously has very political, verses and stuff like that. But here he's actually, just speaking, talking, like he's talking to God, asking why he lets bad people get in charge in life. And, I think it's very interesting. I like what he's saying. He has a very powerful voice. Definitely someone that you want to listen to. The thing is, why isn't he rapping? oh my goodness, Killer Mike's such a good rapper. Why wouldn't you have him do a guest verse on your album? Just have him speaking feels like such a waste, such a throwaway of a guest feature, even if it is a very good spoken word part. I can't stress that enough. His part is very good. It's just, why isn't he rapping? I mean, he can even do both. He could have had a rap verse, and he could have done the spoken word part at the end, too. That would have been perfectly fine with that. The existence of these multiple spoken word parts, whether they be from Logic or guest features, and then, of course, the actual, like, dialogue segments that are happening on the album between Adam and God, it adds up to a lot of talking happening on this album as opposed to actual kind of, like, music. And the thing is, like, I just don't know why Logic didn't take these ideas that he was presenting in these spoken word parts and turn them into actual, like, verses and stuff. Like, if he had turned the whole backstory that he has on Take It Back and he turned those into, like, verses and stuff, that would have been really cool. I would have liked to hear his upbringing story and told in the form of, like, a song, you know, instead of a spoken word part. The same goes with Anxiety. I would have liked to hear that in a, you know, verse instead of the spoken word segment. I think that would have worked a lot better. You know, that's kind of what artists do. They take these ideas and concepts and they turn them into songs with lyrics. I mean, you don't necessarily have to have lyrics, but I mean, when rap music, it's kind of important. And, you know, I was kind of disappointed by that. The content that he's actually saying in the spoken word parts is good. It's interesting, but kind of like with the dialogue segments between Adam and God, after you hear them for the first time, it kind of becomes dull on repeated listens of the album. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the last track, Africarian, which, you know, starts off with a typical kind of song, then it moves on to the Adam and God skit, and then it ends kind of with cutting away to the characters from the last album, The Incredible True Story. And remember, back on that album, from what I remember, I haven't listened to the album in a few months, but, you know, they were actually listening to that album on the album itself. I still don't even know how that works, but now they're listening to this album, and, you know, they don't appear at all throughout the whole rest of the album. And then just at the end of it, really, the end of the musical part, and the Adam and God skit, it just cuts away to them, like, they've been listening to the album the entire time. And I'm just kind of like, why is this here? I mean, I get the whole kind of thing, like, it makes sense for them, I guess, to be listening to another Logic album, but, like, what, it doesn't connect back to the everybody concept, it doesn't connect to the Adam and God part, it doesn't connect back to the different perspectives aspect, it's just there. And I feel like it's maybe, like, if his next album kind of connects back to it more and creates overarching concept, maybe then it would make sense in the concept of the greater scheme of things that I don't see right now, but, you know, as of right now, I really don't know what to say about it. And then, of course, you get a guest verse at the end of this track, a hidden guest verse, I guess you could say, because it's not credited, from J. Cole, who I'm not really a fan of. He just bores me most of the time, but I know lots of people like him, as does Logic, and that's why he's kind of here. It's kind of this lo-fi sort of verse that he does, not really high quality, but, I mean, high quality in terms of the sound of it. The actual stuff that he's saying is decent. I mean, it's just, by the time I get to this part of the song, which is like 13 minutes long, I'm like, can we just end the album already? So overall, despite the complaints I've had with this album throughout this review, I feel like I've been saying a lot of negative things about it. There's still a lot here that I like. The actual music that you get to hear on the project is pretty good. The beats are nice, Logic's rapping is nice, a lot of the stuff that he's saying here is nice. I like the message that he's bringing. It's just the concept and a lot of things he's trying to say. I feel like he bites off more than he can chew here, really. It's just that he goes for this massive size concept, you know, with God and reincarnation and all these different things, when really, like, he doesn't really focus in on any one aspect of it enough to really, you know, get much of a message out of it that's super deep and original. It just kind of ends up feeling, you know, like a mess throughout, pretty much. And, you know, if you're looking at it from the perspective of just looking for music to find and enjoy listening to, this album is definitely going to satisfy your needs if you're a Logic fan. However, if you're someone that's really into, you know, like, concepts and things like that, maybe this whole concept might not sit with you quite as well. You might not like how kind of, you know, jumbled it is. But the music itself here, I can't deny, is pretty entertaining, and when listening to this album, I'm actually, you know, really enjoying it. It's just that afterwards, when I start thinking about it really as a whole, when I really start to see some of the problems. So overall, I think I'd have to recommend this album to you if you're a fan of Logic's work. There's really nothing here that you're not really going to like if you like his previous works. To some degree, you're going to like something here. If you're just a hip-hop fan, there's also something here that I think you'll at least find enjoyment in, so you should check it out. And, you know, aside from that, if you're just a casual Logic fan, maybe it's not quite for you in its entirety, maybe just tracks here and there, but overall I think it's a decent effort from Logic. Not quite as good as his last album, but I think that, you know, if his next album, if he goes for maybe a more concise concept, something that he could focus in on more, and something that, you know, he kind of, like, I guess you could say, kind of develops more of his own style, I guess you could say, with his delivery still, I think he can really make a classic album, maybe his best yet if he's able to do that. Though, of course, it's kind of hinted at here on the one of the skits at the end with the characters from the last album that his next album is going to be his last. Though I don't really know if I believe that's true at all, considering how popular Logic is. But you know, I don't know. I like the album, I guess. What are your thoughts on the album? I like to know them, so leave them down in the comment section below. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more reviews of albums, discussions, track reviews, all that kind of cool music stuff. Thank you for watching, and stay golden!